welcome to the Economy and Politics show. I'm Mr Opeyemi Agbaje. In this edition, we continue our countdown to the 2015 general elections, and our focus will be on the quality of education in Nigeria and the productive economy. We meet to discuss this very critical issue is Mr. Opeyemi Agbaje, CEO of RTC, Financial Advisory Associates. He is also a notable policy expert in Nigeria and a financial analyst. It's great to have you, Mr. Opeyemi.
Thank you very much.
And I must say that your articles during this period has been very instructive.
Thank you very much.
Giving some direction to the financial and, of course, policy experts. But first, looking at this critical topic, the elections, we've heard much about the economy, issues of tackling corruption, but education is a very critical part of our nation. And looking at the sectors between 70s and 80s, we're on the high, and from the 21st century, we're seeing some challenges. So first, I'd like you to assess, since the turn of the Fourth Republic, how would you assess the quality of education vis-a-vis having a productive economy?
Well, obviously significant problems remain in that sector. I think, first of all, we haven't generally realigned the education system to the needs of an entrepreneurial economy. So by and large, we're still producing, look at the ratio of graduates that we're producing is still tilted in favor of an economy with the assumption is that you are producing graduates who are going to seek employment in the civil service, or who are going to go and work in some administrative capacity, or who are going to be teachers. So we haven't yet made our education functional. We produce a lot of university graduates who end up being unemployed or underemployed, but we're not producing skilled professionals, we're not producing technical personnel, we're not producing people to do a whole category of vocational skills and artisanal work at a high quality. So we have illiterates who are plumbers and electricians and all of that, functional illiterates, whereas we then recruit those category of workers, bricklayers, from West African coast and from other places. So we have not tailored the needs of the education sector to the needs of the contemporary economy. Beyond that, of course, there's a problem of quality. And one of the things that is clear is that the problem of quality is at the foundations. So the primary education system is defective, is not producing educated primary school graduates. So all the inputs into the higher levels, particularly the secondary schools, is very bad. And so we have large failure rates. It looks like it has gotten better slightly between 1999 and date, but it's still unacceptably high. Essentially, failure rates as high as 50%. That cannot be the purpose of education, in which half of the people who take school certificate fail.
And you just mentioned about the fail rates at over 50%. And interestingly, you raised the issue of the UK, because I know I was going to ask you, you're widely traveled. And one issue that we've noticed since the turn of the Fourth Republic is the declining performance of students in the WAEC and NECO, even this last one. How did we degenerate to this level?
Well, I think the rot in the education system is gone on over decades. I think it was tied to the deterioration in the economy in the late 70s and the 80s, when we had gotten used to high oil prices and we had built an unsustainable structure for education, whereas the numbers were exploding from in university, in secondary school and all of that. Numbers were exploding, but funding was declining for education sector. So for instance, while I was in university, within that 4-year period I spent in university, it was the period by which one by one things were stopped. So this was stopped, this was stopped, this was stopped, this was stopped. So you saw you saw the degeneration live as Nigeria got broke, and it could no longer sustain the funding that it had committed to for the university system. And it was the same at the federal, at the secondary school and primary school level. Whether that was the university could have been federal government, this one was state, this was local government, but there was a deterioration in funding across the board. And with the deterioration in funding, the general degeneration commenced. So infrastructure suffered, teachers' welfare suffered, the general societal degeneration in values also affected the education system. So everything became commercialized. Teachers began to, whether at the university or other levels, began to think of how to survive rather than teaching anybody. So the whole degeneration has taken decades. I don't think the military helped at all. I think they actually had a disdain for education, and it showed in their approach to the sector. So that is the history of the degeneration. The politicians are being forced to pay attention to it. They too may have wanted the problem to go away of its own, but now it's clear that this problem is not going to go away, and it's going to cause us social crisis. So for instance, if you look at the North and the Boko Haram crisis, it's a reflection of that society's failure to educate its children. If you look at the rate of crime, the average criminal in the South and the average Niger Delta militant or OPC or MASOB or whoever, you will see again that we are paying for our failure to give the high quality of education to our young people. And so they go in all these deviant directions. So it's a function of economic decline in the 70s and 80s, social decline in values, the funding of education, the general degeneration that our economy has suffered.
Now, those things you mentioned are very critical. Now, we look at this administration in terms of universities. Of course, they tout that they've created or established a lot of universities. And even the president in one campaign said there is no state under the PDP that doesn't have a state university. Same with the APC, talk about university and education. But when you look at ranking of universities, even polytechnics in Nigeria, we're not even in the first 500. What should have been the approach of government in terms of infrastructure? Because I believe that part of the analysis is infrastructure and research funding and what puts it competitively with other universities across the globe.
I think we have to be creative about this question of funding education, and we have to do a very rigorous analysis and be creative in to be fair to this current government. If you look at the budget figures, their allocation to the education sector has consistently risen, and right now it tends to come either first or second, depending every year, either first or second. Sometimes it's first, defense comes second, or sometimes defense is first, and it tends to be between 8 and 10% of the budget. So they've attempted, but I think they will never have enough to fund education. That's my view. So again, like I said, we have to be creative and innovative in finding solutions to the funding of education. We have to leverage private sector approaches. We have to the universities have to work like the average university in the United States, for instance, does on creating endowments from the private sector. They have to market themselves. They have to become very sophisticated in fundraising. You know, they have to understand that governments cannot completely fund them, and so they have to create a lot of innovative structures to get scholarships, to get their libraries funded by investors or friends or ex-students or alumni, whatever. But so that's one issue, funding. You mentioned the issue of access. So at the university level, again, the federal government, like you said, claims to have set up 12 new federal universities and 2 specialized universities, making 14. And so, yes, that's an issue of access. So they've provided access for maybe 1,000 more people per university. So maybe that means that 14,000 to 20,000 people who could not have gone to university go. That's important, but still. But the bigger issue is about quality in terms of education and tailoring the education system to produce people to meet those needs, rather than continuing this thing in which 200,000 students study philosophy, history. Well, I like history, it serves a purpose, but we haven't tailored the output of the education sector to the needs of the economy, and that's a large reason why we have unemployment.
And then, sir, finally, as we round up, Mr. Furusho Phillips, chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit, was looking at a skill-based economy, and that comes through when we can integrate skills in even education, like the president has always been positing. Now, how can we integrate this in curriculum, education curriculum?
That's a similar point to what I've been saying, that we are producing graduates, but we are not producing skilled people. So our education system doesn't focus on skills and competencies. It focuses on exams and certificates. But you see, you can get by, you can get an exam passed and get a certificate. But the only thing that gets you a job is not the certificate, but the skills and competencies you possess. So we need to refocus the education system on skills and competencies rather than just exams and certificates, which means the mode of transmission of education has to change, the content has to change, curriculum has to change, the design of programs has to change. It may be the same topic, it may be the same degree in actuarial science, but you will recognize that the university has to know that this guy, my job is not to produce somebody that has a certificate in actuarial science, but it's to produce somebody that Mansard Insurance will employ, because the day he comes out, he has some skills and competencies that Mansard Insurance needs. If you ask Mansard Insurance today, that what's your assessment of the quality of actuarial sciences, which the insurance industry desperately needs and goes abroad to buy, but they have inputs here, and as far as the insurance industry is concerned, to transform the average graduate of insurance or actuarial science into somebody who can deliver skills and responsibilities may require a 4-year period.